Hey guys, this is Dan with Gears and Gadgets. Thanks for tuning in. I said I was going to do this, so here it is. I wanted to compare the Harley-Davidson Street Glide, Road Glide, compared to the Indian Chieftain. This is all really marginal. Three of them are all incredible bikes, and if you like one more than the other, I would not tell you that you're an idiot. I went and test rode the Street Glide was the first one, and I rode Street Glide and Road Glide were CVOs. Now I have ridden a Street Glide that's non-CVO, and to be totally honest with you, they're pretty comparable. The only difference is you get basically the entire parts catalog of Harley thrown at the CVO. One of the first things you notice is that torque pull. That torque pull is incredible. To get into the comparison of the fairings, because that's really the difference between the Street Glide and the Road Glide, is that with the Street Glide you have the fork mounted fairing. For the Road Glide you have the frame mounted fairing. It really was quite a noticeable difference. So if throwing a big touring bike around is your cup of tea, or you want to go out there and really start ripping around in some twisties, well then I'm going to tell you that that Road Glide is by far the way to go out of all three bikes. Now if you want to get back into, you like that Batwing fairing over top of the shark nose fairing, well then you're left with the Street Glide or the Indian Chieftain. And the Street Glide, when I was riding that bike, very impressive. I mean, it just right away, it just feels Harley. Everything about it feels Harley, and that's a good thing. Now let's pump gas. We'll get back into this in a minute. Each bike has its pluses and minuses. So with the Street Glide, you get that real traditional Harley-Davidson torque. It's just really noticeable. I mean, you get on that throttle and the bike just wants to go. It's really a pleasurable riding experience. But the one thing that I did notice, it's a really short travel suspension, and going down the highway, hitting bumps, even like what I just hit there, you feel it. And I mean that like you feel it in your back. It's just it's not as forgiving of a suspension. So in my opinion, the Chieftain and the Street Glide trade those two traits back and forth. With the Chieftain, you don't get as much torque and pull. And I'm not saying that the Chieftain is underpowered, by no means, as much as I'm not saying that the Street Glide suspension is not good. I mean, they're both good. They're both good at what they do. It's just the suspension on the Indian is better than the suspension on the Street Glide, and the torque and pull on the Street Glide is better than that of the Chieftain. I feel that those two specs trade off like equals with those two bikes. So in my opinion, it kind of almost levels the playing field a little bit. But where things change and the scales start to tilt a little bit is when you start talking about price. So call it $27.5 gets you into a Street Glide special. Add another $500 onto that, and now you're into the Road Glide. Well, the Chieftain Dark Horse is $26.5, so about $1,000 cheaper for that Chieftain. And these are just kind of rounded figures. I'll throw some more specifics up on the side here, but so for about $1,000 less, you get the Chieftain, and that's when you start thinking like, well, is that little bit of a torque trade-off with a little bit of a gain of ride comfort worth $1,000 of savings? And I would still say, well, now you're still into like subjective territory. Which one do you like better? Buy the one you like better, because $1,000 isn't going to make or break it. But, and this is a big but, this is where the Chieftain pulls ahead. Your money goes a lot further with the Chieftain. And the reason why I say this is because, all things considered, their infotainment systems are, I'm going to call them the same. I tend to prefer Indians just because I think the screen's a little bigger, and I kind of like the layout of where it is a little bit better. But for all things comparable, I would say they're the same. I mean, they offer the same type of information. And I'm going to stop anybody right now who says, well, with the Harley you get Apple CarPlay, so you know, right away that wins. Well, you don't get Apple CarPlay until you spend an extra $300 on the WHIM module to activate CarPlay. So that's not apples to apples, and I'm not going to include that in my comparison because, well, now you're just basically making the Street Glide more expensive, and it pulls a little bit further away as far as the price differential goes. And then we'll get into the lighting. The Chieftain gives you LED lighting all around. The Street Glide Special does not. To get a Harley aftermarket light for an LED Daymaker is going to cost you $400. And then on top of that, another $90 for the Harley LED turn signals for the front and rear. So there's another $200. So by the time you're all said and done, you've just added $600 onto the cost of your bike, and now you're about $1,500 more expensive than the Chieftain. So that, in my opinion, is something that I think, well, number one, Harley needs to either give more or cost less. I mean, there's really only two ways around it if you want to be competitive. Now the Indian is coming around with the Chieftain, and yeah, arguably taking a little bit of styling out of Harley's playbook, especially on this new 2019. Well, they're giving Harley certainly a run for their money, and they're doing it by selling a bike that has more for less money. And when I compare these bikes, I am not comparing it from the eyes of somebody who, well, money isn't an object. Money is an object. It is to me. When you start comparing these bikes, again, you're talking about a $1,500 difference. The thing about the Chieftain that I personally think is the best thing out of this whole thing is it creates competition that Harley now has to change. And I'm telling you right now that after riding that Chieftain, Harley is going to be switching their touring platform to a monoshock, and they are going to have to mimic that ride out of the Chieftain. It really is that good. Now, for those of you who are asking me, now that I've ridden those bikes, how does it compare to my 2018 Heritage? And what I'm going to say is, well, they're not really comparable bikes. I mean, my Heritage is $7,000, $6,000 cheaper than what these Chieftains or Street Glides are. So it's marketed to a different person, me. And the benefits to my Heritage over these bikes is, well, first of all, the throttle response of my Heritage compared to any of the touring bikes it's just better because it's 100 pounds lighter. You know, also my bike, this Heritage compared to the touring bikes, is also more maneuverable. It's a lighter bike, so it's easier to throw around. It's a much more fun bike, engaging bike to ride than the touring bikes. This Heritage is the Swiss Army knife bike of the bunch. It gives you the bags with ample storage, certainly not as much as what the baggers offer, the full size baggers offer, but enough storage for me to be able to rip back and forth to work, not have a backpack on my back. I like the saddlebags. I like the fact that with that rack on the back of there, I can strap down an extra backpack for these winter months when I'm riding. In the morning, I have a jacket. On the ride home, I pack it in my bag and throw it on that rack in the back. Again, this Heritage was the first bike I've ever bought, so this bike comes in over 100 pounds lighter than any of these touring bikes. So better bike to learn on, not as it's not going to bite you as bad as the bigger bikes if you screw up. I laid it down once. It was actually easy to gently lay down versus the baggers. If it's going down, it's going down, and you're not going to convince it to do it less destructively. And I just want to wrap this up by saying I don't think that the Chieftain crushes the Street Glide. I think they're very, very close. And I'm just looking at this more from the viewpoint of dollars and cents. You know, you get what you pay for, and I don't know anything about Indian quality long term. I would say that based on what I have seen, I don't know, I'm going to say it's negligible as far as one being better than the other. I think they're really close. I really think they're really close, and that's what I took away from all of this riding of these bikes, is that the Chieftain is certainly better than I would have expected. I thought that I was still going to love the Street Glide, no questions asked. Personally, I feel that the Chieftain is really right up there, if not a better value for your money. I don't know, guys, I gotta say that you know, if I were in the market to buy a full-size bike today, I don't know, I really don't know which way I would go. It really surprised the heck out of me, and I would have to say, if you put a gun to my head right now and asked me which one I would buy on a kind of like a whim, I would tell you the Chieftain, simply because of the value that you get and how great that infotainment system is. I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of torque and throttle for enhanced ride quality, a nicer infotainment system, and forego the idea of buying the WHIM module for Apple CarPlay on the Harleys. That's my opinion. So leave a comment down below if you agree, if you disagree. You know, I'm certainly not trying to make this an argument about which one's better, because I think they're so incredibly close to each other that you know, nobody's wrong if you like one versus the other. I don't think you could go wrong with any of them, really. So again, if this is your first time, please click that subscribe button down below. Remember, likes go a long way to help support the channel, and we will see you next time.